Bricks and Minifigs is your one-stop shop for all things LEGO. Hit the link below to find a store near you.
Erik Mattson, and this is Good Grief. So, what to share? Had this? I took this up to Seattle about 6 months ago. Had the first half, and it was fun to share it with you and with everybody else. But it wasn't done, and so now I'm able to finish it off, and happy to share this piece.
It's so much more complete now, and just a really incredible scene when you walk up to this. It's much more immersive for people who saw that first video from BrickCon. It was just kind of almost the front half that you had there.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. It was, the focus was on the corals up front, and it was playful, fun elements, but it wasn't immersive. And you could see things on the backside, and it just didn't feel right. But yet now the whole focus is shifted to the back, to the whale there, and I absolutely love that.
So it is just so spectacular. You mentioned the whale there. Let's go ahead and talk about that, because I think that is really the thing that a lot of people are drawn to. How is that kind of set in there behind that wall of bricks?
So there's 3 layers there. The first is like 1x2 transparent light blue brick or medium blue brick, and they're bent, so they bend under their own weight. And that was really important because with LEGO being so reflective, light coming in, I didn't want you to see yourself. I wanted you to see the whale. And so that was the first piece. And then there's a wall in back that there's a gradient where it goes from dark blue to light blue. And then the whale is kind of in between there. It's a mosaic at an angle that's almost in line with the angle of the transparent brick. And then there's light overhead that just kind of shines in between there. And so it creates a 3D effect. It turned out perfect.
No, it really did. And so you said it's kind of, the whale is almost like a mosaic. So how many bricks thick is that? What pieces did you find worked well for that?
It's 3 bricks thick, okay, with tile on top. In fact, I'll show you it shift from a 3D to a 2D effect here. Give me 1 sec. I'll wander around back, and I'll you watch here. I'll show you. So if you see there, you see it is a mosaic. I took some pictures online and tried to create a mosaic out of it, but just with the way the light works, it creates some shadows over it. It looks pretty real to me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that kind of behind the scenes look there. And then also in the back section, you kind of move from just the white plates to more of the water studs. So what was your technique there, and as you kind of made that and build it up?
Wanted to go, because it's forced perspective, it's getting deeper, but the horizon all comes up. And so just wanted to slowly transition. Firstly, it's got 1x1 transparent rounds. Then it goes to 1 layer. First it's 1 layer thick. Then it's 2 layers thick. And then I started introducing the light trans blue. And then so just slowly transitioning to the dark blue and back.
And that works so well. And that kind of brings us up closer to some of the coral that we have here. So for people who didn't see that first video, kind of take us through some of the different coral that you have represented here and what your approach was with that.
So it started out not looking at specific life forms, but more how can I get the colors in an organic shape? So looking at the color palette first, it was great to see some of these coral pieces on the pick-a-brick wall. I wanted to add that color but didn't know how, and I was able to stack them in a fun way that looked like a coral. And that really was the journey with all of these pieces. How do I get a tube-like feeling? A lot of these corals, they're filter feeders, and so they create little tubes that they eat from. And so that really was the approach, is to find things that look organic with the thesis that there's so much life in the ocean. If I build it, there's something that looks like it. And actually, it was really fun. Yesterday, there was a professor. He works with the Oregon State University out in Newport. And he said all of these things look like corals, maybe not all from the same ecosystem, but there's all life forms that they're similar to. And so it was fun to ask him. I asked him about these this grass here out of the telescopes. And he said, "Oh yeah, that's eelgrass." And he started telling me about how eelgrass works. And in real life, there's eels that take on that shape. I forgot the name, but it was just fun. There's stories in all these corals, and so I'm anxious to learn more about the life forms I've made and find out what they are.
I also love the fish that you have kind of hidden throughout here, and even some of the smaller kind of different scales, different sizes of them as well.
Yeah, so I reached out to the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and they told me that's probably a triggerfish. And they helped identify, giant clams here. So yeah, fun to see the different life come to life.
And then obviously a huge part of this build is the rock work itself. And it's just like mind-blowing scale that you've built here. What is the overall size of the whole build?
So it's about 7 feet wide, about 7 feet deep, and what is that, 3 feet on a stand? The hardest part, one of the harder parts, was figuring out the woodworking beneath, because that's not a skill set for me. So fortunately, I've got a good friend that helped out with that.
Okay.
But yeah.
So with so much of this rock work, then what was kind of the approach and the planning of this? Because you're building not just from the ground up. When you look up here, it's all studs down there. So how did you get that at such a huge scale in these different sections?
I started knowing what I wanted, but not knowing how to get there. And I actually had some friends come over that are in the Lego community. Rick Vogt, he was helping me out with structure. And we had at first thought building on like a shelf from Home Depot and using the higher layer of the shelf to hang things from, but kept running into problems getting things to line up, hanging from a shelf, building it at this scale. It just became a nightmare. But as you step back and say, wait, what's the strongest structure? It's an arch. And an arch can be freestanding. And so these pieces, they want to fall in because there's more weight towards the center. And on each successive layer of brickwork that goes back or rock work that goes back, there's a keystone. And so they all kind of fall into shape. So it's pretty solid with that.
Then how many different sections is this kind of when you're traveling with it, bringing it to a show like Bricks Cascade? How does that work?
There's about 65 sections.
Wow.
Yeah.
And those just kind of like stack on top of each other? Or how do you kind of know how that all fits together, and how long did it take you to set it up?
When I took it to BrickCon, it was an 11-hour setup and about an 11-hour, or 6-hour takedown. It was exhausting. And so fortunately, because I'm local here to Portland, I was able to shrink wrap a number of these pieces in place on the base. And so it was, with the pieces, actually assembling them was about an hour and a half in time. So it wasn't too bad. But longer distance travel stresses me out.
That's understandable. Something else I always like to point out when I see it is your use of Duplo here and kind of the box around it. And that's always such a great technique when you're building on a large scale like this. So how much of that is Duplo around the outside, and how did you kind of incorporate that?
There's a lot of Duplo. I needed to control all the lights. There's so many different light sources coming in here. And so I've wrapped the entire structure in Duplo. And I also like the effect it gives. Duplo's lighter, it's quicker to build. It doesn't have quite as much clutch, but it gives such a clean finish. And so really like that element, and it's not as heavy. And so the whole thing's wrapped in Duplo pretty much.
So is this the end of the road here for this build, now that you've kind of added to it and brought it to Bricks Cascade, or do you have any other plans for kind of an underwater world like this?
It feels like a canvas. The canvas is done, but life changes, right? And so there's opportunities. I would love to find kind of a public venue or some place to share it with, because I can't take it apart. So yeah, so it's life isn't done, but most of the building is done.
Well, spectacular work, and I'm so glad we got to see the finished product here at Bricks Cascade, and thank you for all your work, not only building it, but the effort into bringing this huge build out to a show here. So thank you, and keep up the good work.
Absolutely. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to share.